You're listening to the Career Musician Podcast, empowering musicians with strategies for a sustainable career.
On this episode of The Career Musician, we have my good pal Tony Shepperd, an amazing engineer, producer to the stars with credits like Boyz II Men, Shalea, Take Six, Quincy Jones, Disney, The Manhattan Transfer, Diana Ross, Michelle Williams, Lionel Richie, Kenny Loggins, Madonna, and Kamasi Washington, just to name a few. Now, the cool part is that Tony and I go way back. We were introduced by another guest here on The Career Musician, John Stoddard, and we ended up working together on so many projects together. What I love about Tony is he has that magic touch, literally. Every time I turn in some guitar tracks, he makes them sound like pure gold. Be sure to also check out Tony's episode of Pensado's Place. It was extremely informative, but right now you're listening to The Career Musician with yours truly, Nomad, and my good buddy, Tony Shepperd. Tony Shepperd, welcome to The Career Musician.
I cannot believe I finally got an invite here. I see all my friends coming through here, and I'm like, what does it take? I know this guy. Nomad can't hook a brother up, and I have to almost die before I come over here. And then it's like, oh, there we go. Before he dies again, let's bring him into
please pull the wooden stake out of my heart. Oh my gosh. I have been trying to get you here for years. We always talked about it and then schedule, and it's just crazy. And I have to tell you this. Okay, so we here at The Career Musician, we do everything based on my memory. Now, first of all, as musicians, typically musicians, okay? I'm pretty good with organization and responsibility and being a good businessman, but sometimes I screw up, So anyway, when I brought Eric G on board, my studio apprentice and assistant, and he's doing great. He's amazing. He does all the editing now, but he also does the scheduling. So he made a spreadsheet. We built this spreadsheet, and I have all these names on it, and then so these names get tossed around. So your name has been on my point. Your name has been on the list for the past 2, 3, 4 years.
That's just sad.
It's just a matter
of
sad. Okay. Well, we finally connected
we're here
the dots. Yeah, exactly.
Here I am.
Like a patch
so happy
bay.
To be here.
All right, good. And like the patch bay I just showed you in my rig, we finally got the inputs and outputs aligned.
It's all good.
Yes.
We're ready here.
All right, good. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is that you're such a badass engineer. Mix engineer, but it's been said, and I agree because I've had the pleasure of working with you for over many years on several projects. You're also a producer, and I love how you even Dave Pensado himself said, you blur the lines of that producer engineer job, and I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first person who said that to me was Kenny Loggins. That's right. Yeah. I worked on a project with him for a couple of years, and I said to him, Kenny, he said, I can't legally give you credit for this because, I've signed a producer and with a producer agreement. And I said, anything you throw my way that's close enough, that'd be great. And so the whole thing is in the album liner notes, it's just like, dude, you blur the line between engineer and producer. And I'm like, thank you, Kenny. I'll take that. So, you wear different hats. Regardless of whether you've been hired for someone to engineer or to produce, they are interchangeable skill sets.
That's right.
And so if you know that something should be done, someone's hiring you to play acoustic guitar, but you go in and you're like, dude, that bass line is a little funky. You should do this and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, dude, that's a great idea. Well, you weren't hired to be the bass player, but, what you brought to the table actually helped the situation. So
I love that. And as a musician, so much of what we do in that realm, what you just described, falls under the term arranging.
Yes.
Right?
Wow.
So, and same thing here with you, because an arranger really is a freaking producer.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Well, and it's really fun because you work with people who are producers, and then you realize you don't know the first thing about what you're doing, but you're writing the checks, and so you're like, you're keeping everyone employed, and you're going to call yourself a producer, but the truth of the matter is that you're really not producing. You hired everybody else to make you look good.
Okay, well, this is why I love Tony Shepperd.
Whoops.
I'm a Cuban Italian New Yorker. I cannot lie. It's impossible for me to lie. I'm just going to tell you the fucking truth all the time. That's why I love you, because you always tell the truth.
I mean, and the sad thing is that, there's no place where you can really have that conversation with them about, like, you're not really producing. And it's like, I'm co-producing this with you because I'm trying to help you along, and I'm trying to help your budget along. And I'm trying to tell you, you got to bring in so-and-so before you bring in such and such, because if you don't, there's going to be a big bottleneck at the end of the day. And they don't understand what scheduling is. It's like, well, you can't have the guitarist come in at 10 a.m. and you have nothing to record to. Where are the bass and drums? The drummer couldn't come in until 4 o'clock. I'm like, what are we recording? Oh, I can see your point. Well, if we're tracking, it's like, and you talk to these people, and it's just like, okay, I'll try and help out as well.
I love it. I love it. But I think in a position of experience such as yours and mine, you even have a little more experience than me, and I've always looked up to you in that manner.
Oh, you're very sweet.
No, it's true. But in the position that we find ourselves in, I do think there needs to be some mentoring taking place, and it is what we do in situations when we do find ourselves working with less experienced individuals.
True. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is you always need to pass on to the next generation, and I think that has been hugely missing over the last 20 years. Because, now you have a situation. There was a time when I would be in Studio A and you're in Studio B and somebody else is in Studio C, and you would walk out and say, do what you're working on. It's like, come in and check out and see what I'm working on. And you'd stick your head in the door like, that's really cool. Dude, who's playing drums on that? I'd love to have them on this. And there was this camaraderie that happened in this industry. Yeah. And now that everybody's in their own cubicles, no one gets to talk to anybody, no one gets to see anybody anymore. And there's this lack of knowledge that's not really passed on to the new generation. So you have this entire I make beats generation, and things are falling, into the cracks, and they're wondering why the music industry is in the shitter.
Yeah.
It's just like, well,
I love it, and it's so top heavy or unevenly balanced, because the digital realm, you have nothing but information being shared. Oh, this new dope plugin, this new dope sample series, this blah, 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 this new whatever it is, right? Yeah. But like you said, in the real life, hands-on, analog. Yeah. Brick and mortar, skin and bones sense, there's nothing. There's no connection.
And there's also this disconnect that happens when you think that everything can be solved if you just buy a new plugin. It's like, well, but that plugin's not going to help the musicianship. Did you hire a great musician?
To begin with.
Because if you didn't, now you know why your track sounds stale. It's stale and sterile, and nobody knows why. It's like, well, it came out of a box.
That's right.
It's like it's like demo. It's a cool demo,
right?
And then you auto-tuned or melodine the singer to death. And next thing you know, you're like, it doesn't sound good. I'm like, really, really?
Surprise!
You think so? You think it sounds like stale tuna? I mean, I don't understand what it will take in this industry for people to snap back and to breathe some creativity into their productions. And that's just sad.
Well, tell us. Okay, so I totally concur. Tell us about the beginning for you, because you did catch the last part of that heyday where you were going into Capitol or Ocean Way or whatever it was, Universal, whatever studio it was. Lots of different producers, artists, musicians working in different rooms. That camaraderie. Tell us about that. What was that like for you?
So let's back up in time. Let's back up. Okay, so I knew when I was 12
That's what I
or 14 what I wanted to do.
Thank you.
I knew I wanted to be a recording engineer.
Explain that, because the average 12 or 13-year-old has no clue.
They don't get it. And so, I've for many times I had these conversations with people. It's like, I'm 50 years old and I still don't know what I want to do. And I'm like, what? Yeah. I knew what I wanted to do. I used to read the back of albums, and I used to read the back of Earth, Wind & Fire albums, and I'm like, George Massenburg at the Complex. I'm like, I need to meet this guy. I need to figure out how he did what he did, because this record sounds amazing. It's like there's no reverb, and then you hear there's like a little delay. So there's like the parts on the right side, but there's a delay on the left side, and it's like just all kinds of little things that it's well recorded, and all these things that make the ear candy make you go, oh my God, who did this? So I started working when I was younger, probably, 14, 15, at a college media services department. And when I got ready to go to college, there wasn't, at the time, there were no such thing as a Full Sail or anything like that. So my dad was like, you're going to go to this college, and that's that. So I took photography because I always had an interest in photography. So my major was photography and my minor was business.
Yeah.
But I knew I wanted to be a recording engineer. And the entire time I was in college, I kept buying things. So by the time I got out, finished with college, which I really didn't finish, but that's a different story.
Sure.
There were, I had a Lin 9000, a Mirage, and a Synclavier.
Okay, pause. Hold on. First of all, a Roger Lin drum machine.
A Roger Lin. It was the Lin. Well, it was post the Roger Lin. It was the Lin 9000.
Okay.
But it was the Lin 9000 pre-sampling. That's how early it was. Yeah. They had them on the ROMs already, but you couldn't sample anything.
Into it.
They were getting close to it, but they weren't quite there yet.
Okay.
And bought the first one. I had a business partner, Army Attil, and she and I would buy the Mirage was like, I don't know, $2,000 or $3,000.
The Sonic Mirage.
Yeah.
Incredible keyboard.
Sure.
And that was a sampler as well.
We
right?
had the rack mount sampler.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, so that led me down this rabbit hole. Like, okay, well, what's next?
Okay, but then you said the golden. You said a Synclavier.
Right.
That's like $30 million back then.
Back in the day.
Come on, dude.
So it was just one of those things where it was just like we kept amassing all of this stuff. And I talked to her and I said, let's open up a studio. She's like, sure. And I bought a used Synclavier at the time. And it was great.
Do you remember what that ran you back then?
I think we bought it used, pre-sampling option for like $40,000 or $50,000.
Oh my God.
Pre-sample. It was the original. It was like the original keyboard. It wasn't the Velocity keyboard. It was
Nowadays, you can get a Neve sidecar for that.
You could buy Australia for that price. I mean, let's just be honest. We spent a lot of money back then because it was new technology.
Wow.
And we got burglarized, which was actually actually a blessing in disguise because when they came and took everything, they took the keyboard, but they disconnected it from the CPU. And so they, not realizing you had to connect it to the CPU in order to work. So when the insurance company paid out, they paid us out and it had to be a new keyboard. So we got a new keyboard out of it totally.
Okay.
Okay. And it's like, okay, well now it's time to move because I'm not going to go stay in that place anymore. Yeah. So we moved and, we got a Neve 8232 with JH24, 24 tracks, and Westlake BBS M15s.
Dude, okay.
We were...
Okay, hold on. Who's financing this?
Well, my partner, and my partner at the time, she said her dad was a cardiovascular thoracic surgeon. He was just like, listen, I will finance. What do you need? It's like, well, we need to build a studio. Wow. We need to do this and this. And we had like one of the big rooms out, and this is because I went to school at Loma Linda University.
Okay.
So we were out in Riverside, and was just like we built this studio from the ground up, and it was a magnificent room.
Wow. Out in Riverside.
Absolutely. It was like 1,800 square feet. Wow. It was awesome. We had two 24-track analog machines. We had the Synclavier. We had the Neve. We had her Steinway. It was,
So attracting clients was no problem.
Well, in Riverside, if I was in L.A., but we were in Riverside.
But back then, nobody wanted to drive like
nobody wanted to drive.
Because we all drive now.
Yeah, well, now.
We have to.
But, back then it was just like one of those things. And finally that was in 1987. And about 89, I was making friends at the time while this was going on. I got to know the guys in Take Six. Now, the guys in Take Six, all of our parents had gone to school together at Oakwood College.
Oakwood produces musical monsters.
Yes.
Just for the listeners that don't know,
yes.
Anybody that goes to Oakwood comes out like a musical freaking monstrous
it's
genius.
A beast. Yeah.
It's crazy.
So, at that time, it was the weirdest thing because Mervyn Warren's dad and my dad had gone to college together. And they were like, well, my kid's doing music. Well, my kid's doing music. Well, we should get them together so they can talk music. It was one of those kind of things. And at the time, Take Six was still, they hadn't been signed yet, I think, by 87. Or they had maybe just been signed. And when I met Mervyn, he was just like, because I had spent like the last 4 or 5 years just like, doing production. That's all I was doing. And he was doing stuff production-wise, but it was really just a cappella stuff. And not mainly a cappella, but mostly a cappella. Hence Take Six. But we met at a conference, and he was just like, dude, let's sit down and talk. So we went down to the Taco Bell. My then wife and I and Mervyn, we sat at the Taco Bell for like 3 hours and just talked production. And he was just like, I would love for you one day for us to like work on something. And I'm like, yeah, just let me know. And about a year later, he called me up. I think it was maybe 1989, 1990, and said, I'm going to resign from Take Six and just do production. Do you want to come down to Nashville and work with me? And I was like, yeah.
I say, because I know the Take Six cats from Nashville. Yeah.
They were all in Nashville at the time.
Right.
So he's like, I'm going to resign from Take Six, and the first artist I'm going to do is a guy named Chris Willis, who is Brian and Claude, their cousin. And Chris can sing his ass off. Chris is, and everybody in the family will tell you that Chris is like one of the best vocalists in the family. When you have Brian and Claude in a family, and they all look at Chris and go, "Well, Chris is one of the better." It's like, okay,
Jesus.
It's like, okay, it's like you have to laugh. You're like, okay, the boy's he's ridiculous.
Get any better? Yeah, I mean. Yeah.
So it gets to the point where my wife and I at the time we packed up and we moved to Nashville. We had our first child. And we were there for 2 years.
Sorry, what part of Nashville did you go to?
We were out in the Hermitage.
Yeah.
So we were east of town, like almost out to Mount Juliet.
On the east side, love it.
Yeah, almost out to Mount Juliet.
Okay.
And we were there. We worked on Chris's album for a year. And when we were done with that album, it was really sad because we turned it into Warner Brothers. We turned it into Warner Alliance. And they were like, that's nice. And they literally shelved the album. And they were like, that's cute. But we have something else for you to work on right now, Merv.
Okay.
And Merv's like, but Chris's album, we've been working on that for a year. And they're like, yeah, this is more pressing. And it was a project called Handel's Messiah, Soulful Celebration. Oh. And Merv and I jumped in. Mervyn did 8 cuts of the 16 cuts that were on the record. And we worked on that almost nonstop for 6 months. It was, and it was insane. And we were doing, because we had budget back then. I mean, I think that whole project was like $700,000 or near that. I mean, we had real.
Okay, can we have a moment of silence, please? Jesus H. Did you just say you had a project that, first of all, technically it was an amazing project, but not even technically mainstream, quote unquote? No. I mean, that still had an over $700,000 budget. Come on, dude. But that's amazing.
You had a time. I mean, back in the day. I mean, first of all, you had Take Six, and Gail Hamilton was one of the executive producers of the project. She was managing Take Six at the time, and she pulled Mervyn in and said, I want you to do like most of the production on this project.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So it got to the point where we were doing this stuff, and we had it was really interesting because I had my beliefs in some of the things that I was like, we can track the basic tracks on with Dolby SR and 24 track, and then we're going to dump that to a 3348 or some kind of digital machine, and then we can do all the vocals in digital. And Mervyn's like, I don't think this is going to be worth all of it, so I would just move everything in digital.
Is this like the radar world at that point?
No, it was way before
pre-radar.
Way before radar. It's like we're going to have a 24-track, 2-inch machine with Dolby SR for noise reduction.
Okay.
We're going to track all the drums and bass and guitar, all the rhythm section stuff. Then we lock them up to a 48-track.
48
tracks dash machine, Sony
dash digital recorder.
And so we would lock them up to a 48, and then we would dump them across, and we would do all of our vocals on digital.
Oh my goodness.
So it was the warmth of analog with Dolby SR, so it was great and punchy and clean
and gluey and tight.
Oh my God. Yeah. And then we had all this stuff on we do most of the vocals on digital. And I had to sell Mervyn on it, Because the first time he was just like, there's a lot of extra added expense and time.
Yeah.
Is it worth doing all this stuff? And I'm like, trust me, it's going to be completely worth it. So we went in and started working on stuff. And I think the first song that we did, he came back and said, dude, this sounds amazing. And I'm like, you're happy now? And he's like, yeah, we have our blueprint. This is good. We're good to go.
So you sold. I love that. He was sold. I love that.
So in between that little widget of time, in between those things, we did Yolanda Adams' album.
Wait, which one? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was her very first. There's a song called "The Only Way" that Merv actually wrote while we were working on this. We were in there. Dude, we were working on everything.
I'm so surprised we didn't meet in those Nashville years. Now, you might have left before I got there, but I worked with Yolanda later on. I came in 1997 to Nashville.
Yeah, I was gone by then.
Okay, see, that's why.
Yeah.
I hooked up with Tyrone Dickerson and Denny Giosa.
Oh, yeah.
Who both were producing Yolanda's stuff at the
Yes.
time, and I worked with her for quite some time.
So Denny got sick. We were up in the tower. Were you
the Tower Studios?
United Artists Tower?
Oh, no. Okay. Oh, I'm thinking of the Castle in Frankfurt.
Yeah, no. But the United Artists Tower. Remember the tower is like 6 stories high?
Of course.
They had a studio upstairs. I think it was like maybe the 5th or 6th floor.
Really?
And Denny was there, and Denny because he ran the studio, and Denny something happened to his dad or something, but or he had like dental surgery or something and couldn't make it. And they called me up and said, Yolanda needs tracking for her second album. Can you come in and track the band? I'm like, yeah, sure. I got nothing to do today. So I ended up tracking the second and third records with, and I haven't seen her in like a million years.
Yeah.
She's just amazing.
Oh yeah. She blew up. Yeah. From that point, she just went.
Because the first project we did with her, Mervyn wrote the song called The Only Way. And she came, I think we only did 2 takes on it. And Yolanda, like 90% of it, 90% of what you hear on the record was like the first take.
Pure vocal beast.
Yeah. It was just like, we were just sitting in awe, just looking like, oh my God, who is this woman?
Yeah.
Because she was an unknown at that time.
Yeah, and meek and brand new to the scene.
Dude,
and
my
just
God. And she's
humble.
still very sweet.
She's still so sweet and humble.
I still love her to death. She's
her,
absolutely cool.
No, all my years with her, I think it was 5 or 6 years. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And to stand behind her on stage and just listen to everything.
And you listen to her, you're like,
what the heck?
What came out of your mouth, woman?
And then I would try to emulate it on guitar, so it's good. It's going to school,
That's it,
you
dude.
learn. That's how you learn,
So we would go and we would hang out, but it was, working with her was great, and she was sweet, and all kinds of little projects here and there in between. I did stuff for Take 6 and all that kind of stuff. So Handel's Messiah did well. It came out in October, I think, of 1992. And during that time when we were making it, the LA riots happened because Rodney King got his ass whooped, and the cops. So I'm in the studio.
Yeah.
At Henson at the time, at A&M at the time. It's now Henson's.
Now Henson, yeah.
And we're recording, and Jerry Hay is in there, and we had like all the guys who were doing horn overdubs for the Hallelujah Chorus, because we had the Hallelujah Chorus and everything. And I filmed all of this stuff. So I have all the stuff doing with Al Jarreau, Why the Nations, and Tevin Campbell, and Daryl Coley. And like, I recorded all this stuff, and I just had to transfer it like literally a couple of days ago, like maybe a week ago. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like 3 hours of footage of like, Al Jarreau singing Why Do the Nations. So it's just like, we were just having a blast and doing this stuff. So anyway, that came out in 92. In 93, I think it won a Grammy.
Wow.
Mervyn got the Grammy that year because he had done the lion's share of the production on the project. And I believe, as the story goes, Mark Shaman, do you know Mark?
No.
Brilliant composer, an arranger. Everything I think that Rob Reiner has probably done as a director, Mark Shaman has scored.
Copy that.
So A Few Good Men, Harry Met Sally, everything that he's done.
Of course.
Yeah. And I think his melodies are amazing. Yeah. Anyway, he heard Mervyn's stuff, and they were getting ready to work on Sister Act 2. And they asked Mark, do you want to work on Sister Act 2? And he said, no, but you should really get this guy, Mervyn Warren, because he just did all of these different styles of music in this Handel's Messiah Soulful Celebration. And he's the guy you should get.
He'll crush it, yeah.
So Mervyn took the meeting. They fell in love with his work. And next thing you know, we're working on Sister Act 2.
Wow.
And
so at this point, you and Mervyn are kind of a
team.
Right-hand man together.
Because when he told me in '87, he was just like, at some point we're gonna work together, and it's gonna be cool. And at the time, I thought, well, it's gonna be we'll co-produce. At the time, I thought that, but something changed along the way, and I'm still like I'm down for the ride because it was great stuff, and we were working on stuff, and he let me have my space of like, dude, as long as it sounds amazing, I don't care. Tell me what the budget is. Tell me what you need. So I felt I had my own domain of like.
You could run with it.
Yeah, I could run with it. And he was totally cool with it. And he had his thing. And as long as we had a great working relationship.
Yeah.
It was difficult, but it was good.
Understand.
You know what I mean? You know what it's like.
That's why I took a deep inhale because I truly understand.
Yeah, you've been there. Everybody's been there before. But he's great. He's still a good friend of mine.
Yeah,
well, we talked last week for like 2-3 hours. But when we worked on Sister Act 2, we were working on, I remember the first time we were in the studio with, it was actually a group of kids, I think the first time we were in the room. But what's her name was from Sister Act 2, who's in the Fugees.
Oh, Lauryn Hill.
Lauryn Hill.
Oh yeah. Oh, she crushed that role.
Yeah. So she's in the movie.
Yeah. And that like kind of pretty.
That's what elevated her to.
Yeah.
So we're in the studio. Wow. We're at Motown and we're working. This is like '93, let's say, because the movie didn't come out till '94. So all the pre-records had to be done. So Mervyn and I are working on there, and I think one night was like, I think I have some of this on video. It was like maybe, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night or something like that, and she's just like, I really don't consider myself a singer. And Mervyn and I are looking at each other like, wait, what?
What?
And she's like, I'm really I want to kind of do more rapping.
Yeah.
And we're like, what? And she's like, yeah, I've got this group, and we're going to do our own thing. And, and I said, what group are you in? She said, well, it's a group called the Fugees. And I'm like, the what? And she's like, it's called the Fugees. And I'm like, whatever, you're an amazing singer. And so...
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? That's nuts.
And she was just as sweet as she could be.
Yeah.
And, no one knew who she was, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, she's a complete unknown. But after that movie came out, everybody knew. When Sister Act 2 came out, it was one of those iconic things that His Eye is on the Sparrow, which is in the movie.
That's right.
Mervyn's arrangement, all that kind of stuff. And it was one of those things where... if I hear one more, there was a period of time for almost 20 years where it's like if you hear anyone, like especially on American Idol or something like that, they would sing that song, and I'm like, no one's ever going to do it like her. Stop it. Never going to happen. Just leave that alone. And but we did that. We did that in '93. The movie came out in '94. In '95, I think Mervyn got the call to do The Preacher's Wife with Whitney.
Wasn't that Denzel too?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was like, and one thing after another, and it kept rolling along, and then finally, I think about '99. I'm just skipping ahead here.
Yeah, please. It's your story.
It was about 90. Well, somewhere in '94, '95, I met Stephen Bray. Do you know Stephen Bray?
Yes.
So I met Stephen Bray because we were working at his place, Saturn Sound, a lot.
Tell everybody, for those who may not.
So Stephen Bray is a writer, producer, drummer, and some of his bigger songs are Get Into the Groove from Madonna, which he wrote and produced. I think he just produced Papa Don't Preach, Keep It Together, some of her bigger hits, her earlier bigger hits. That's all Stephen.
Yeah.
And so we met, and we hit it off really well in that '94. And I said, dude, with all the juice you have, why don't you have your own label? I mean, why don't you do that? He's like, because I don't have the right people to do it with. I was like, dude, let's partner up.
Now you have me.
So we started doing some stuff together, and that took me to we were doing projects and really great stuff for a long time. Saida Garrett and Cree Summer and a whole bunch of really cool things. And we have a friendship that lasts to this day. But we worked on stuff, and then that takes me up to '99. And I had started doing work with Kenny Loggins because I think Nathaniel Kunkel called me up and said, I have to go work with one of the guys from Crosby, Stills, Nash Young. It wasn't Crosby.
Sure.
It might have been Young. Might have been Steven Stills.
Neil Young or Steven
one of
Stills,
those guys. So he's like, I've got to go to Hawaii and do this stuff because I've already like pre-designated this time. And by that time, we had all switched over.
He's got to go work with a legend in Hawaii. Jeez.
Yeah. And so he called me up because technology had moved along, and we had gone now from 3348s. Sony machines to ADATs and Tascam DA88s.
That's what I used to work on.
And then we went from that to I was one of the first early adopters of radar.
Oh, okay.
In 96.
I knew it. I knew you were a radar guy. It just made sense.
Yeah. And I was talking to somebody in retrospect. It's so funny because I think it was Dave Hampton. Do you know Dave?
That one I don't know.
You should know Dave. Dave knows everybody.
Great. Want to meet him?
Yeah. Dave, and Dave's got stories because he's been around Prince. I mean, he's just one of those guys who's been around for a while. Dave said, do you remember the ad? Because at the time, Steven had a room at Saturn Sound. He had 3 rooms. He had a Neve in one room, and then in the B room, I think in the C room, he had Christopher Cross's API, and in the B room, we were trying to figure out what to put in there, and we got sold on the concept of putting in a Euphonics console. And it was really cool and it was really great. And Euphonics asked us to be part of their ad for, their advertising. Because we had like a 56 channel Euphonics at the time. They was, Steven bought it, but I knew how to run it. And it was what I worked on every day.
Sure.
And Dave Hampton said to me, he goes, do you realize that is the first ad, to my knowledge, I've never figured this out if this is true or not, but he goes to my knowledge, that is the first time 2 black males have ever been on an ad for any manufacturer in the history of this business. And I'm like,
look
that's
at that.
Not possible. He's like, yeah. He goes, I cannot think of any time before. He goes, I can't think of a single black male, but he goes, 2 black males for an ad for Euphonics. Wow. He goes, never seen it before ever.
That's incredible.
And I asked the guys, and I can't find anything previous to that, so I have to figure out that maybe he was right.
Jimmy and Terry?
No,
wow.
Not on an ad for a
manufacturer.
Lots of music magazines were Jimmy and Terry, but manufacturing side.
Got you.
It's like, I'm Atari, and I use this, and never happened before.
Wow.
So
way cool.
Yeah. So, and by '99, I started working with Kenny on stuff, and I think I was still working heavily with Merv at the time, and I think we did one 90-hour week, which I pretty much had hit the wall at that point, dude.
Oh shit!
I told my wife at the time, I said, and she was world's greatest wife.
Yeah,
absolutely amazing. I said, I'm going to build a studio at home.
Smart.
Because the kids, I'm not seeing the kids.
Yeah.
And this is like beyond the pale. I'm away from that studio. I mean, away from that kids like 90 hours a week.
Was this the one that I know
that
I went to? Okay.
Yeah, it was on Keswick Street.
Space,
yes. So I went in. It took me a year to build that space.
Of course. To get it right.
I built it cash.
Good for you.
Cash at the time. So when I opened the doors, there was nothing to pay.
No overhead, baby.
No overhead. And I built it. I floated the floor.
Yeah,
I floated the walls. I floated the ceiling. The air conditioning. I had Flores come out and do the air conditioning. It was whisper quiet in the place. Yeah. Everything about the place was
just nice cathedral
ceiling.
Oh
my God. The ceilings were 14 feet high.
Yeah.
It used to be a 2-car garage, and I gutted it and put my studio in there.
Love it.
And I remember Maureen from the engineer producer wing, she came in and she was just like, I think this is like the nicest home studio I have ever been in. And she was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I'm like, good. I'm happy. But yeah, so that I went in there, and Kenny and we worked on a record for he'll probably shoot me for saying this. We worked on his record for 2.5 years.
Wow.
Once again, we had budgets back then.
Yeah, of course.
And
were you able to work from your home space now with Kenny?
So I would go up, and it was one of those things where we would work we worked half and half. So during the week, for a period of time, I would drive up to Santa Barbara every day. I come home at night and drive back every morning.
Oh my goodness!
I did that every day. I was 3.5 hours on the road every day.
Why not just get a room up there?
So finally, after a year, Kenny was just like, dude, just move in the house.
Just move in.
I was like, no, your family's here, and I don't want to do that to you. He's like, you know what? Then let's just get a hotel. Yeah. And you come up during the week, you stay all week long, and then you go home on Friday night. I'm like, cool. So we did that. And we were there together when in 2001, September 11, when he was just like, he walked in and he was like, what is going on? And we were standing there watching TV, and he's like, dude, this is war. This is insane. So lots of memorable things happened during that project. But yeah, I worked in that room, and the first project we had in there, besides Kenny, was, I think the very first project I had in there was Backstreet Boys.
Oh, wow.
I was doing some stuff on Backstreet Boys. And then I think we jumped on Kenny's project. And then the weekend I took off. I worked on the project like Friday, like in the middle of like August. And I took the weekend off. And that Monday morning, I jumped back into Whitney Houston's Christmas album with Mervyn.
Wow.
I literally had took off Friday and
2
Saturday.
days.
Saturday and Sunday. Monday morning, Mervyn's like, it's 10 a.m. Be here. I'm like,
oh my God.
After working for 2.5 years and jumped into it. And we worked on the Christmas album until like November. And then I just said, I got to stop. I absolutely hit the wall. And took off like a month and a half.
Yeah.
And then like that following year, I think I did something, Ivy Scoff. You know Ivy. Production coordinator. Been production coordinator for Babyface for like 150 years.
Okay.
If you've been in the studio with Babyface.
No.
Ivy?
She must have left just before I got there then.
Well, Ivy was production coordinator for like a million things. If you look her up online, you probably...
Okay, yeah, of course, yeah. But remember, I didn't get with Face until 2007.
Okay.
So
well, all that stuff
missed.
Stuff, that was what she had done. And she worked with Kenny because she's worked with Kenny off and on for like 30 years. So we worked on a bunch of stuff, and she called me up and she goes, what are you doing this week? And I said, nothing. Why? She goes, Lionel Richie needs an engineer because his engineer got sick. Can you pop into that? I'm like, yeah, sure. So it was one of those God things where it's just like, I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And I got pegged for doing a lot of, because of Take 6 and, the Barbra Streisand stuff or Kenny Loggins. I got pegged as doing like real singers.
Yeah.
Because it's like, these are people who can sing.
Upper echelon, yeah. Yeah.
And so, and it's so funny because you always get the stuff where it's like, well, you work with so-and-so. It's like, yeah, but that's them. If you can't sing like them,
that's like when a singer says, well, yeah, the producer said they have this mic that it makes the hits. It's a hit maker mic. I'm like, well, no, the mic doesn't make the hits.
But they believe
the song and the performance make
they believe it. Yeah. And there's this thing that happens to people where they believe it hook, line, and sinker. And it's like, I can't make you sound like Mark Kibble from Take 6. No. That's just not going to happen. You have to be Mark. I can record that. I can capture it. I can't make you sound like Whitney Houston. I can't make you sound like Shepperd.
But this is where exactly another one that you were there for the breaking of it. I mean, this is where musicians and artists really have to do some soul searching. You're going to sound like you.
Yes.
And the only thing that's going to change that is the amount of time and sacrifice that you put into changing it.
Yeah.
So if you think that you're not good and you want to get better, then it's going to take 8 hours a day for 2 to 5 years.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to sacrifice that, then go work in another field, please.
Yeah.
Don't muck up our field with mediocrity.
Yeah, and that has been the problem, I think, for the last 20 years.
Thank you.
Is that it is mediocrity at its best. And you can't, I've had these conversations with people because our industry is just practically at all-time low. And it was bad before COVID hit. And then when COVID hit, everybody who was like, you can't make your living in the studio anymore. Yeah. Now you got to go on a tour on the road. It's like, well, all that just came to an end.
Yeah.
So now you're really screwed.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, dude, where you just keep saying to yourself, how much lower are we going to sink before we do something different? Because this is not working and this is not going to work. We got to figure out something else. Hi, I'm Tony Shepperd, and you're listening to The Career Musician with Nomad.
Blasting the stereotype of musicians. Follow us at The Career Musician Podcast.
Binge previous seasons of the Career Musician Podcast and subscribe for all new episodes.
Okay, wow. That was an illustrious story. I love it. I love that ride. Okay, a couple things I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So first of all, we'll start here and maybe work backwards, or we'll just ping pong. I was at a rehearsal in D.C., Washington, D.C., with John Stoddard as the music director, who, as our mutual friend, who connected us. Big shout out to John.
Yeah.
John was on the podcast as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so thank you, John, for connecting Tony and I. Anyway, John called me. I think I might have been living in Nashville at the time. Yeah, probably. And then he says, can you do this gig, blah, blah, blah. We're rehearsing, you know. Oh, and that's how I also met Eric Valentine.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I love Eric.
Yeah.
Eric, we're still waiting for your podcast. Okay. So we're all a circle of friends. And that's the day that I walked into the studio, and it was Shalea, and I didn't know.
Yeah.
And again, I had one of those experiences where I'm like, holy crap, am I listening to Yolanda Adams again?
Yeah.
Like 2.0, like a rebirth of Yolanda and Whitney right before my eyes.
Yeah.
So talk about that, because now you have, and you brought me into work with Shalea too, but you have partnered with Shalea or developed. Talk about that whole
So I met Shalea
process.
in 2001.
Okay.
And she'll tell you she was 5 years old. So we're going to go with that. Because she's only 25 now,
That's
right?
so cute. Yeah.
We met in 2001 because a mutual friend of ours named Leroy Peters knew that I was like hard on singers.
Yeah. Oh.
And he was just like, this girl will blow you away. And I'm like, dude, I've heard you say that a million times. Like, trust me.
Bring it.
This girl's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So I called her up and spoke to her. Her version of the story is quite different than my version. But she told me her version last week another time. It was just like hilarious. She said, I remember you calling me up and I told you I was signed to a production agreement, and you were like, well, call me after you get out of the production agreement. And you hung up on me. I'm like, wait, what?
That doesn't sound like
I'm
you.
like, what?
I don't think
and she just started laughing. She goes, it was close to that. And I'm like, well, you know, so she came out. She was between her junior and senior year in college. And I said, you know, she was on her way. I think they were living in Bakersfield at the time. Her dad was coming to LAX to pick her up. And I said, swing through. I'm in the San Fernando Valley. It's on your way. It's right off the 405 freeway. Pop by and so I can meet you. That'd be great. She came in and she sat down and she played and sang 3 songs, and my jaw hit the floor.
Yeah.
I think she played The Savior's Waiting. I should send you some of that stuff so you can drop it in on this podcast. It's just remarkable. And this is 20 years ago. She was, 20, 21
Very
years
young,
old.
yeah.
Just like you hear it in her, and you're like, my God, where
the heck did that come from? Yeah.
where did that come from?
Yeah.
And we signed a production agreement at that time. And we worked together. We've worked off and on. That production agreement eventually expired. And I took her, actually, at the time when we were signed to a production agreement, I took her to, I had my good friend, Greg Cham. And Greg was like working at the time with Eric Dawkins, and said, let's get Eric to write a song with her. She and Eric can write a tune. And then she took him to Harvey and Damon. So they did this song called Wish We Was Back with Harvey and Damon. I mean, so this is, everybody, it's 2 degrees of separation in this business.
Absolutely.
And
the Underdogs, by the way, who both Harvey and Damon have both been on the podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Awesome.
Dude, I'm clearly the last.
I can't believe I keep
Valentine and I are the only ones.
I keep digging myself deeper into this hole. I can't believe
this thing has been going on for like 100 years. Like this podcast, you're the last man standing.
I'm sorry, Tony. It's
all
not
good,
like that.
It's all good. Yeah. So I had talked to all those guys, and it was good, but nothing ever really came of it because they kept trying to change her. you should be this.
Yeah.
You should be this. Yeah, and instead of letting her be what she wanted to be.
She's so distinct already. Just let
her be what she wanted to be. Yeah. And so she and I just we always stayed in touch. But it was like, well, you're no longer tied to the production agreement, do what you want. And somehow she got in with Jimmy and Terry's camp.
Yeah.
And she started writing for Jimmy and Terry. And she used to call me. I'm like, I would be like going to bed at 11 o'clock. And she's like, I'm on my way to Jimmy and Terry's. Yeah. And they stay up all night. I'm like, girl, go with God. Because I'm not hanging with that. I did that stuff before. I'm not doing that again.
I can't do that anymore either.
But she was doing stuff and she was paying her dues with them. And it was great. Mm-hmm. But finally, about 10 years ago, I decided I had probably enough of working with everybody else. And I wanted to start my own label.
Good for you.
And I signed, one of the first 3 people I signed was a young man named Justin Wilson, who was her brother-in-law. Ah. And Justin, who won a Grammy, I think 3 years ago. Justin, exceptionally talented. We worked on a Christmas album because it was just like, let's do this album first. And I had always stayed in touch with Shalea. I mean, we saw each other all the time. She's like a sister to me, Mm-hmm. So we always stayed in touch. But she was so impressed with what we had done with Justin's album. Mm. She was just like, let's do something together again.
Good.
I was like, yeah, let's do something.
Good.
So that's how we'd always, I shouldn't say reconnected because we were always connected.
Right.
But it's like, let's work on a project.
Good.
And her heart is in her, fundamentally, she can sing anything.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, her heart is in jazz.
Right.
She loves it.
Right.
And when we used to work for a long time, she used to sit there and while I was working on like comping a vocal or doing a mix or whatever, she would sit there with headphones on and listen to the big band channel and listen to Ella Fitzgerald and Frank Sinatra and Mel Torme. And she's just like, I want to do an album like this. I swear to you, this is in my heart and soul. And, she's never veered far from that. Although because she grew up in the church, she sings the gospel. And she sings
R&B, of course.
R&B, and she's
But she can sing pop and rock.
She can sing anything, and that's the thing. We just finished
classical.
No, she could do that too.
She could do that too. I mean,
we just finished this week. I think it was a week ago Monday. We were over at Tom Harriman's room.
Oh yeah.
You know Tom?
Yes, absolutely.
And have you ever been? You worked in his room, right?
On
Ventura Boulevard.
Yes,
his new place.
Beautiful,
it's gorgeous, right across from Dr. Dre's place.
Yeah,
and it's gorgeous. So because I've been out of my room since 2018, so I've been just going to his room cutting vocals. So that's like now Shalea is home away from home because that's all the places we work.
Gotcha.
So about a year ago, something like that. I don't know. I've lost track of time during COVID times. But during all this 20 years of time, I had worked, because I met Raul Ferrando.
I was going to say.
Like in 96.
Who's also been on the podcast.
Yes. Remind me to whoop your ass later. Let me just say the whole music business has been on the podcast. But me.
No, not yet, because I got to get Tom Harriman. I got to get Shalea.
You should get Tom. You should get Shalea.
Yeah.
You should definitely get Shalea.
Yeah.
You should definitely get Shalea. So there's this thing where, I kept saying to Raul.
Raul, I love Raul. Yeah.
Dude, I love him. He's amazing, like a brother.
Arranger,
yeah. And I'm just like, when we started the record label 10 years ago, I said to him, you are an amazing arranger. What you are missing are the tools. So Breath of Life Records will buy you the tools. We're going to go out and we're going to get you the East-West package. Because at the time it was like, I don't know, 12 or 15 or 1,800. It was something insane. And I was just like, dude, and then you're going to give us a reduced rate on like all the stuff. And at the time, he was the first thing we did was Justin's album. It was just like, and he did all the orchestral arrangements on that.
Oh, wow.
So it was just one of those things where it was just like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
It's absolutely perfect. So Raul and I, last year, after, working with various people over the last, umpteen million years, I said to Raul, dude, I'm tired of working with a bunch of other people. Let's you and I do some production work.
Do our own thing, yeah.
And it just so happened that Alan and Marilyn Bergman, who wrote The Way We Were, and
thank you.
Yeah.
Classics.
Yes, classics. Alan Bergman had reached out to Shalea in December of 2019. Yeah. And he said, I've written this song for the Biden campaign. Is there a way you could sing it? And she said, I'm literally on a plane getting ready to go to like Florida or something. Call Tony. Whatever you set up with Tony, it's good to go. We'll do it. So he called me up, and she was so busy. She was gone for like January, February, and March. And finally, in March, everybody came off the road because it was COVID. Everybody came off the road. And I remember talking to people, and they're like, dude, everybody's going back home. And finally, it was about July of last year when things were heating up with the presidential race. And I said to Raul, let's do something. Let's do something together. June. It may have been June. And Alan Bergman came to me and said, I want you and Raul to do this project. I want Shalea to sing it. I want you to do this song.
Beautiful.
And I said, okay. And so, yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
So that song was a song called We the People.
Yes.
And Shalea sang her ass off on that song.
Yeah. And you guys produced it.
And we produced it. And it was Raul's arrangement, and it's just the beginning of it. I forget the gentleman's name, but really just wonderful project. And they had this thing at the beginning where it was William Shatner, and he did the prologue to it. And it's just like, it was one of those things where just like, oh my gosh, everybody's on this thing. Yeah. And so we've been doing, Raul and I have been doing these one-off songs. And about 3 months ago, I said to Shalea, let's do something special for Juneteenth celebration.
Oh, yeah.
And she says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to do A Change Is Going to Come. She's like, Tony, everybody's done that song. I said, you haven't done that song. And she's like, okay, I trust you. I love you. And I trust you. We'll do something. But everybody has done that song. I said, yeah, but Shalea, everybody's not you.
Right.
And
very important to remember. Everybody, listen.
I'm telling you.
We all have our own voice.
Everybody's got their thing. And so we went in, and we have been, and I have a whole different sets of things. This is probably a third or fourth podcast down the road. But I've had this love-hate relationship with musicians and their union. Because I think their union in many ways does them a disservice. And that's one of the reasons why, in some ways, I think, places like Budapest have sprung up. We used to have, sampled strings, and then we would put 4 string players on top of it. And it's like, okay, each one of those string players, we do a union contract with them. It's $200 a person. And by the time you're done with everything in the studio, it's going to cost you, I don't know, $1,800. By the time you're done, $1,500 to $1,800. Like, okay, well, that's just the price you have to pay. You go over to Budapest, and it's like, okay, I can get 40 players for 30 minutes for $900.
Wow. Yeah.
In great rooms. And these guys are working nonstop. And I hate to do that to my musician friends, because I love I have these, like I said, it's a love-hate relationship. I love the friendship of them. But I just think it's like, you guys we have to figure out another way, because this industry is not working the way it is.
Right.
We've got to figure out a couple things. But anyway, so we did this project we used the Budapest players, and Shalea sang it last Monday night. And it is probably her best vocal she's ever recorded in her life.
Wow.
And even she surprised herself.
Where did you track that vocal?
At Tom's place.
At Tom Harriman's.
Yeah. And we used, he's got a reissue Telefunken 251.
I was just going to say, give me some goods, man. Come on.
He's got
give all the tech nerds.
I'll tell you, he's got a reissue Telefunken 251, obviously reissued by Telefunken. And I used into a 1073.
Okay.
And to a Tube-Tech CL1B, and straight into Pro Tools.
Just that. That's a pretty straightforward line.
That's usually my
That's your go-to.
Yeah, because my go-to in my room is a Bach E47.
Okay.
To a 1073, and then about 3 years ago I switched over to a Ventura mic pre, which is just amazing. It's made by A Designs Audio, and it's made from the old Ventura consoles. Amazing. It's got the depth and kind of mid-range of what a Neve would have, but it's got like the clarity of an API. So it's got this unique.
Best of both worlds.
Oh my God! So I recorded Shalea on The Change Is Gonna Come, and throughout the entire time, I think all I did was put a filter on the bottom end just for her P's that popped.
Yeah.
But literally,
you just let it ride
all the way through. There's no EQ.
You let it ride.
It just was perfect.
Look at that.
I was like, and Raul came over and he listened to it and he's just like, I hate you so much. he's like, there's no EQ on her voice. I'm like, well, she knows the mic.
Well, yeah.
She knows the room. She knows her voice.
She's a pro.
She knows herself, Yeah. So there wasn't this this where you go and people are like, oh, you got to carve here and carve here. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just got to get out of the way. Mm-hmm. You pick it's the Al Schmidt guide to get a great vocalist, you get a great mic, you put them in right, get a great get a good compressor, and you're off to the races. Instead of and
let the equipment do their it's their job.
If it's the wrong mic, then put a different mic in front. Don't sit there and grab the EQ. And so, and I've worshipped the feet of Al Schmidt for like 150 years. I mean, he just, when I grew up, man, it was just like there's and all my sonic heroes are passing away, and it's just it's devastating me. It's devastating. I thought Al would live to be 100 years old.
And before him, a couple...
Ed Cherney passed away a couple of years ago. It's like, you start talking to people, and it's like, it's like...
And the list goes on.
Oh, the list goes on.
I know. Well, musicians, too. The whole industry is suffering in that regard because time is passing.
It's passing, but
it sucks.
The tragedy of it is that as it's passing, all of these things that we've held sacred, that's in their head,
we're losing.
We're not gaining and passing it on to the next generation. The next generation doesn't give a shit.
Well, that's why you're here today.
You're
passing your wisdom on.
Well, it's you start having. I'm working with this young artist. Her name is Bren Filer, and she's really very sweet. Love her voice, and it's back to the simple things. Great melody, great playing, and not like a million things on productions and like auto-tune and Melodyne. I mean, those definitely have their places. And I would rather save a performance and just tune up a vocal here and there. But when 99% of your stuff is being tuned because you have no pitch.
Right. Then you're not a musician anymore. You're an entertainer who's trying to craft music together, and it's just anyway.
And that has its place too.
Yeah.
And I'm not bagging on it.
Yeah.
But you can't build an industry because not everyone is going to be an entertainer that Beyonce is or Taylor Swift.
Right.
There needs to be, a homegrown, like reawakening of real people playing real instruments. And
using real hardware.
Yeah. and real, it's like, okay, can you perform that with just piano and vocal? Or do you need everything? Do you need like a stadium full of things and 50 dancers behind you in order to pull that off? And I mean, I listen to, I'm not trying to sound like an old fogey, but it's just like I listen to the music and it's like every time I start listening, it's like, I love TikTok.
Yeah.
But every song on TikTok is the same.
Sounds the same.
It's absolutely the same. You're like, this is like one thing after another. It's the exact same tune repackaged.
All right, let's get to the crux of the matter here, and I believe you could truly help. So first of all, the main mission, our modus operandi, if you will, modus operandi, however you pronounce it, our MO here at the Career Musician is to empower musicians with strategies for a sustainable career. Okay, so you and I both know we've strategized about our own careers for many years. Not only strategized, but agonized, right? So now, perhaps by our experience, insight,
I resemble that remark. Yes,
there you go.
Absolutely.
We could share this wisdom with others. So, in that, our first objective here with the Career Musician is we're teaching people how to record like a pro from home. Because with the onset of COVID, but even before that, everybody's been recording from home. The issue is, we know, and you know more so than the average person, a lot of the home recordings are just not up to par.
Yeah.
So as the illustrious, amazing, wisdom-filled engineer
as the guy who's been pushing buttons more than anybody else.
You're an engineering god. As that person, okay, let's talk about an affordably priced home rig that can get people up and running, okay? So I'm talking about a mic, a good condenser mic, a good preamp, a good compressor, and obviously you're going to get the laptop. You're going to get the Apple laptop, or occasionally you'll get a PC, but I prefer Apple as you do. And you're going to get the software. I don't care whether you use Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton, Cubase. Okay, talk to us about the chain.
Okay, so there is a sonic difference between Pro Tools and Logic.
Thank you. I love you. Because I've always said it. Listen up, people.
There is a sonic difference between Pro Tools and Logic. Yeah. And there are people who will say it's all zeros and ones and you cannot tell the difference. I can listen. I mean, I have this conversation with Eric Jackson all the time. And she's like, I can sit down and listen and go, that mix was done in Logic. Why? It's got no top end. And it's just like, I don't mean to be cruel, but I was an early adopter of Logic. 96, 97, 98, 99. Okay. Up until 99, and then I switched over to Pro Tools.
Okay.
And there were some really cool things that Logic did. And I still think as a production tool, Logic is amazing.
Amazing.
But as a recording tool, once you have programmed everything you're going to program, and then it's time to start cutting stuff, cut it in Pro Tools.
I do that. I still adhere to that process, but I feel like that's a dinosaur thing that people just don't respect anymore. But I still do that.
Well, the problem is that I hate to say it this way. To me, Logic is sonically challenged. And I listen to other things. I've listened to people who do stuff in Cubase, and every DAW has a different way that they handle the audio. And so every DAW has a different sound. Cubase sounds different than Ableton Live. No. Ableton Live, I mean, you start listening to it, like you can hear the difference.
You're like, wow.
And they've got different algorithms, the way it's like, they time stretch stuff. It's like, whoa, what happened to that? You stretched it 400 times what it's supposed to be. It's not like right. But it's just, we let it go because, well, we had to do it. It's like, okay, there's certain things we have to let go. But find yourself, you will never regret buying yourself the right DAW.
Okay.
Or a version of, like, I'm going to program in Logic and then I'm going to record all my vocals in Pro Tools. You're never going to go wrong.
Okay.
You should never record at 2444.
Right.
Never.
Okay.
Industry standard is 2448.
That's right.
That's what you record at.
Thank you. I'm so glad you said that too.
I'm sick of this. And you say, what's going to end up at 1644 anyway? And you're screaming. I'm like, shut the fuck up. It kills me with that shit. It kills me with this shit. It's like, record at 2448. Your reverbs are going to sound better.
Yeah, keep it there.
Just keep it there.
Yeah.
Because, especially because a lot of people, you never know if you're going to get something that's going to be in a film. An industry standard of film is 2448.
Gotcha. Just put it there.
It's a no-brainer. Just put it in, lock it in, and rip off the knob. That's what you do.
Okay.
And so that's the second thing. You are never going to go wrong with buying a good mic.
Okay, tell us.
I mean, I'm partial. Okay, right now you're on a Sound Deluxe.
Sound Deluxe U195.
Right. So Sound Deluxe was made by Dave Bach.
Yeah.
David Bach. And David Bach's mics are amazing. Yeah. I love it. I went to a trade show about 10 years ago, and I've known David for 25 years.
Yeah.
Really super nice guy. And he said, how come you don't own one of my mics? I said, you don't have anything I want. He goes, what do you want? I said, I need a great 47. He goes,
a U47.
Yeah, a U47. Yeah. So he goes, all right. I'll see you after the show. This is a AES show in San Francisco. Yeah. He calls me up in like a month later. And he says, I got a mic I want you to try. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. He goes, just try it out. If you like it, let me know. I was like, okay. I go over, and I'm just like, it's just like a mic, dude, whatever,
Yeah.
I plug it in, and Shalea came over. She's tested pretty much every mic I've ever used.
Yeah.
And she sang on the mic, and she was like, oh, my God. This mic is heaven. It had top end, it had body, it had depth. It had everything that I was looking for. And when you have a better mic, you can capture more distinctly what happens in the room.
The dynamics of the room and the performance.
Because now, and I get on people about who sing into like these little.
Oh, that little vocal like, diffuser thing, that little baffle that you put
dead as it can be.
Yeah,
there's no life. There's no, and so and I'm sure it can work for some things, but build yourself a nice little room and give a little give and take into your room. Yeah. It doesn't have to be completely dead because that's just there's.
It can have some liveness to it.
Please give it some life.
Right.
Some of the best vocals. It doesn't have to be super reverberant.
Yeah.
But you have to have some degree of like. This is going to sound good.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you're going to hear the lawnmowers. Sorry.
Yes, that's okay.
Hey, it's a podcast.
It's a podcast. What are you going to do?
It's real life.
So there's this notion somehow that it's like, if I sing into a dead room, it's going to be okay. That's not going to help you. That's just not going to help you. And you're not going to get a great vocal by doing that. Right. So get a great mic.
Okay.
Get a great room to put that mic in. And then your chain that you put things through will make a difference. You can, for instance, can you tell the difference between let's say, no offense to anybody because I'm just throwing out names.
No, sure.
Can you tell the difference between a $200 mic pre and a $1,000 mic pre? Yes.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Yes, the answer is yes. You can tell the difference, and especially when you're talking about recording any acoustic instrument.
That's right.
When you come over to my place and you're recording, it's just like your guitar playing is breathtaking.
Thank you.
There may be 5 guys on the fucking planet that can play like you.
Oh, man.
There are 5 guys.
I love you.
There's maybe Ramon. There's, George. What's his name? There's Dean Parks.
So funny,
there's 5 guys on the fucking planet that play like you. I have this conversation with Raul all the time. You were in that pantheon, and those guys are in their 60s and 70s, and so you start worrying about our industry because it's like I don't see anybody behind you. Who do you? Well, you're the youngest guy I know who can like walk in and kill some shit.
Yeah, well,
and that's disconcerting to me.
Yeah, they're out there.
I'm not saying that they're not, but I haven't found them.
Yeah,
and so there's a whole generation. I feel like it's like this. There's a skill set here that's being lost.
Well, it's a skill because I sacrificed so much of my life not worrying about anything but how to get the best tone out of my guitar. And it's not even about playing the fastest licks and the most impressive shit. No. It's about getting the best sounds out of my instruments. Yeah. And really, what starts with because my thing is acoustic. You give me a damn acoustic guitar, I'm gonna make it sing the way I do, and that's because I just spent the time with my hands and my acoustic.
Sure. And you know that instrument and it knows you.
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to slap it and diddle it and twiddle it and beat it up like some of these amazing good guitarists do on Instagram and TikTok. I think it's impressive. That's not me, though. So remember, going back to your style, know your style, know your voice, and expound upon that. And do that. Yeah. So that's what you're saying.
Yeah. So know your lane.
Yeah.
And it's okay to reinvent yourself, but it's firmly establish yourself in one lane.
Yeah.
Don't try to be a master of all.
Right.
It's like you're not going to be the world's best songwriter and the world's best this and the world's best engineer. And hire an engineer, have them come in, set it up some shit. And like, you know what, dude? Here's what I got to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this home thing, but when I get to a point, I'm going to come to your room and I need you to do this. It's like, dude, it's like there was this time, a couple months ago, you're like,
I called you.
You called me up like, dude, I can't mix my way out of this. I'm like, dude, send it over to me. Like, dude, you're my. It's same thing happens with John Stoddard.
Yeah,
it's like, dude, you're getting yourself to a certain point. It's just like, send it to me. That's what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
I can't sit down and play guitar. I can't play keyboards. What the hell?
When I heard it back, I was just like, damn it, Tony, why didn't I call you sooner?
Well, it's so funny because it's just like, it's like, this is what I do. And I don't veer out of my lane too far.
Right.
I don't sit there. I can play a scale on a piano, but I'm not going to be able to sit down and play chords and go, on that E flat diminished seventh. That's what it's like. What? Yeah. It's like when you work with Take Six, and that was. It's like I used to sing before I work with Take Six. And then you start working with them, like, well, I'm never singing.
I'm not singing again.
That's some bullshit. I'm never going to go down that path again.
All right. So let's talk turkey real quick. So give me this chain. So just off the top of your head, let's say somebody says, you know what, Tony, I can spend $3,000. I need a mic, a this, a that, bam, bam, bam. Just give me some ballpark things. Throw out some. It doesn't have to be specific, but you can say, "Oh, I like this company. I like this company. I like this product. I like this line."
Buy yourself a great mic.
Okay.
Buy yourself a really good mic pre.
Okay.
And if you cannot buy a great compressor like a TubeTech CL1B,
okay,
which I think is great because it's tube. You can put 5-6 dB of gain reduction on that thing, and you won't hear it.
It just hugs everything.
Oh my God! It just
right. It's like the warmest.
Oh my God, dude! It's like God was like, let me infuse a little bit of myself into this compressor. It is breathtaking what that compressor can do.
Okay.
It has a different characteristic than, say, an LA2A or 1176. Yeah. And if that's the sound you're going for, where you just want to clamp a hold of the vocal and just like do 20 dB of gain reduction, that's a different thing. I don't do that. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that's going to be able to hug that vocal and take the dynamics of that vocal and pull it into line without having to sound like it's just like, oh my God, so much gain reduction, I can't even breathe. So make it a plan. This year, I'm going to buy a great mic.
I like that. Spread it out over time.
Even if you buy a used Sound Deluxe, I'm going to buy I'm going to buy this mic, and this mic, used costs me $800.
Yeah.
But that's and you get to know, and it may not be, we had this thing with Kenny where we had 251s, and he has a bunch of vintage mics. And the producer came in, and it was gosh, can't remember his name, from Nashville, Tommy Sims.
Tommy Sims, love Tommy.
Love Tommy.
Yeah.
And Tommy came
in on the podcast.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, I'm gonna shoot you there. Tommy came in, and Tommy was just like, I'd like you to try this Audio Technica AT4031.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. And Kenny tried it, and he just instantly sounded amazing. And he's like, I'm like, dude, it's amazing. Like, how much is that mic? He's like, it's $300.
See, there you go.
I'm like,
you just never know.
And that's the mic we're using. We actually end up selling all of his other vintage mics. C24.
He had everything.
He had everything.
C24.
I mean, he had a career. He's like, he goes, why am I holding on to the rest of these, like literally $100,000 worth of mics we sold?
Oh my goodness.
Undeniable. He's like, there's no point in holding on to this. I mean, I sound great on this mic, and I don't need another mic. And I'm like, dude, it's a $300 mic, but it sounds amazing on you.
Buy 4 of them. Yeah.
And so that's what we did. That became the mic for that record, and it was just like, dude, it worked. It took out the mid-range thing that was kind of just like driving. It's like, we always had to dig out. Yeah. It just smoothed everything out. It was an amazing microphone. Now, it doesn't have to be a $4,000 mic. You just need to find a mic that works great for you.
And what's the best way to test mics, Tony? If you're an independent artist and you don't have access,
strike up a friendship with somebody who you can always rent a mic.
Oh,
LAFX.
You can rent mics. That's right.
You can go to LAFX. Those guys, like, they rent mics. It's like, I need to try a blah 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 blah. Give them a credit card. Try the mic for the day. And
you can rent the preamps and compressors too.
Yes.
You could rent all different little signal chains.
You could go to a place like Stag Street Studio.
Yeah.
That has got 251s and 49s and 47s and, every kind of mic, ribbon mics, every kind of mic. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to do a 3-hour recording because like someone like Melody is fantastic. She's got a vintage API. She's got every mic you can think of. And it's like, I'm trying to find the best vocal mic for me. So she's got cheap ribbons and she's got super expensive tubes. And it's like, I'm just going to go in and rent, the studio for 3 hours and just sing on some
Where
vocals.
Is she now?
She's over in Van Nuys.
What's the studio?
Stag Street.
Oh, Stag Street.
Yeah.
Right.
So, that was my home away from home because it was like...
I remember that.
Dude, I could literally walk to my house from her place.
I think I worked with you at Stag once or twice.
Probably.
Yeah.
And it's a great room, and she has every mic. So it's
so
like
you could go in there and just book a session.
That's it.
And say, hey, I just want to go through all the
I just want to go through all your mics.
The lines.
I'm trying to look where the best mic is. And it could be something used, could be something new. Who cares?
Yeah.
It just has to work for you.
I like that.
I work with an album with Catisse Buckingham.
Of course, yeah. Well, thanks to you. Well, I don't know him personally, but
Catisse is a beast.
Yeah.
But Catisse was like, for the rap stuff.
He hasn't been on the podcast.
Oh my God!
So that's when we got to get one.
I beat Catisse. So there we go. Catisse comes in, and Catisse is like, So we put him for his flute and his sax on a vintage mic. But then for the rap stuff, I was using the Marshall microphone. You can get a Marshall microphone. You get 2 microphones for $110. Marshall mic?
Not Marshall the amp company.
Not Marshall the amp
Marshall
company. Yeah, Marshall microphones. You get 2 microphones. Back then it was like the 2000 XL or 2001 XL. It's just, I can't remember what they call it now. But you get 2 mic. You get a little dynamic mic, like a little pencil mic for like $135.
Jeez.
And
you're using that for raps?
I was using it for rap.
Wow.
And it had an edge to it that worked.
It's pointed.
And just somehow when he would,
so it really makes it stand out.
It had like a little edge on him, like shit. And I put him in front of like all these other mics. So you had this thing where his flute and his sax were on these big vintage mics. But then when he would go to rap, it would be like on the stuff that just like cut through the mix. I'm like,
everything.
Shit, this is, you know.
So you don't have to sit there and notch and carve for hours.
Once again, right mic.
So I love this premise of you let the gear do the work.
Yeah.
That it was created to do.
That's right. Yeah.
Instead of trying to get other gear and then make it force a round peg into a square hole, right? You don't do that.
Yeah, because the first thing you'll start doing is this doesn't sound right. You start grabbing for EQ, and you're like, this was the worst mic in the world. It's like Bonnie Raitt sings on an RE20, I think.
Okay.
And Ed Cherney I was like, I'm like, an RE20?
And who makes the RE20?
Electro Voice. Oh. It's usually used on kick drums.
Oh, but that's what she likes.
Turn down the lights.
She sang that?
That is on, that's Bonnie Raitt on an RE20.
Holy cow.
She's like, what the fuck? It's like, she's amazing. Yeah. But Ed Cherney is just another one of my sonic heroes, dude. Yeah, sure. Ed can make anything sound amazing. Wow. And I loved Ed. And so, and of course that was during analog times too. So that's another facet of like stuff. And Shalay and I have been talking about like doing a new project. And I said, we need to do something that's retro. We need to do an analog project. Let's go get some analog tape.
Bro. I just tracked a rock band over at Steakhouse here in North Hollywood.
Love Steakhouse.
Man, I love that
Luke's place.
And, Luke's place. And Sam is the head engineer.
Oh, yeah, Sam's awesome.
What a great cat, man. Man, did he pull out some of the most amazing sounds from that EMI Neve and all of his toys over there.
Sam's a sweetheart,
It was beautiful, man.
I went to work with him last year on Kamasi, Washington. We were over there for the day. And the first time I'd ever worked there was years and years ago.
Yeah.
But that's another great place, dude.
Yeah.
Great board, great sounding room.
Yeah. Oh, the room is stupid.
We
tracked live drums. Dude. It was incredible.
Oh my God, dude! Yeah. I did tracking for Lionel Richie in that room.
Oh wow!
Like everything about that room was just great.
Yeah.
The board is fantastic. The room is vibey.
Yeah. Super good. Yeah. Anyway.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. All right. So taking all of this, so if we distill all of this information and knowledge and wisdom and experience down, and we know that analog still rules.
Yes.
And we know that you trickle it out. Buy the right gear over time. Don't be in a rush. Let the gear do the work for you. What are your final words of wisdom for young people coming into the business? They are just so hell-bent, determined on making it. What are you going to tell them?
Knowledge is power. If you can learn from your predecessors, if you can understand how something was created, if you can go back to James Jamerson and know why his bass sounded the way it did during Motown times, or if you have an understanding, this is an industry you're going to be in for the next 30 or 40 years. Have an understanding of what it is that came before you.
That's right.
Learn from those things.
What came before you? That's right.
Because before you, there was literally tons and tons of recordings, dozens, thousands, millions of recordings.
Yeah.
Learn something from that.
People laboring over it and tinkering with it and figuring out how to make it great.
Go back and listen to Nat King Cole on a 3-track recording where it's just Nat and the orchestra.
3 tracks.
3 tracks.
Full orchestra and vocal
Full
on
orchestra
3 tracks.
And vocal. And it's like the orchestra is left and right.
Yeah.
And the center was Nat.
Wow.
And learn from that. And be a student. Don't just think that everything started with you, because it didn't. So have an appreciation for the fact that you are coming to the game late, and you have a lot to make up for. So learn. And don't be afraid to ask. There are no wrong questions.
That's what I always loved about you. The first day I met you, we go in the studio, and I asked a question about a preamp or something. And you're like, and I said, I know this is a stupid question. You're like, no, it's not. There's no stupid questions,
dude.
Or if I send you a mix and say, hey, I know this might sound, like I'm ignorant. And you're like, no, ask away.
Let me tell you something, dude. One of the things I pride myself on is knowing other people's gear. When I go into a session, I can sit down and listen. I know the difference. I'm listening to a song. It's like, well, this shouldn't be a Gretsch drum kit. We should do this with a DW. Right. It's like you should know the difference between a Gretsch and a DW and a Ludwig and a Tama and a Yamaha. You sure should. You should sonically, as an engineer, you should, and that helps your production techniques. If you want to be a producer, know the difference between those things.
Just like a Telly and a Strat.
Know the difference. I don't play a guitar, but I know the difference sonically between a Telly and a Strat.
Yeah.
I know the difference between a hollow. It's like I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were like, I was like, who recorded this guitar? It's like, dude, this is jazz. You should have put a sweet hollow body guitar on. They're like, what? And I'm like, what
you don't
the
record
hell
jazz
is
on a
wrong
Strat
with you all? What the hell? It's like, and this goes back to what I was saying about finding out all the things that came before you.
Oh, man.
And having an understanding. It's like when you listen to some of these masters play what they do, you have an understanding. It's like, take some time and learn this shit, dude. Don't just come in and think you know everything because you can make a beat. Shit. I got a fucking drum machine that can
make a beat. I got
artificial
an app.
Intelligence can make a beat.
I got an app on my phone. I got an app on my watch that can make a beat.
Siri, make a beat. Like Siri, like thank you, Siri. Like, okay. Like, do I have to give you credit for that beat, Siri? No, no, you don't.
Actually, Mr. Shepperd.
My name's already down on the ASCAP forms. That's okay. So I mean, have an understanding that you have come and you are coming into an industry that actually has produced dozens of years of recording before you even thought you were like, I think I want to be an engineer. There was hundreds of years of recordings of learn from that. Go back and what made the 70s. Right. When someone's going to say to you, hey, you know what? I need this sound to sound like the 60s. Like, what was so cool about that?
Because what's the difference between those eras? If you talk about 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, right there, you're talking about 5 decades that are so different.
Completely different.
Sonically different. And if a producer or an artist says, I want to capture that decade sound, you better know what to pull into.
And if you're a working musician and you don't know the difference between the 60s and the 70s, shit.
Figure it out. Start studying. And we have the Google now. Oh, dude. Come on, use the Google.
But talk to another musician.
Talk to humans.
That's my thing.
Who have done it. Yeah.
I mean, I sit down with Kurt Mascara. Do you know Kurt?
Of course.
Amazing drummer. I sit down with Kurt, and we'll sit down and talk drums. Now, I'm not a drummer.
Yeah.
But Kurt and I will talk drums for an hour.
For days, yeah.
It's like, what the fuck? Yeah. You have to, once a year, I go and I make my annual pilgrimage to DW. And I walk through there and I learn how they're making the drums now. Because to me, that makes my job easier. I know what materials are you working with? Well, wow, how is the maple a different sound than this birch? Yeah. Why is this birch sound different than the zebra? Why? And all of these different woods that they're creating. And it's like, I need to know that because as an engineer, I can capture a sound better if I have a better understanding of what you're coming from. So have a conversation with somebody. Yeah. Sit down and talk to someone like Nomad and say, listen, dude, what guitar are you playing on that? I don't know how you're getting that sound.
Right.
That is God's sound. I'm looking for that sound. How did you get that?
Well, here's how I do my nails. First of all,
exactly.
On the left hand, I clip them. There's no nail.
But dude.
And on the right hand, I get acrylic, but it's all in how I get it done.
But nobody talks about that.
And it's how I file them.
Nobody talks about that.
That's right. Because that's all it is with an acoustic.
But nobody talks about that. They think it's like, I'll go to Guitar Center and get this $4,000 guitar. It's got nothing to do with the fucking guitar.
No,
what is with you? It's in your hands.
Yeah.
That's what makes the difference.
That's right.
And for engineers, it's in our ears.
There you go. Right.
It's how we hear things.
And knowing which knobs to twiddle.
Yeah, and knowing when not to twiddle a knob.
And to sit back and, sir, put your hand away from the mixer.
Stop. Sit back from the mixer and just listen. And that's one thing that you learn from Al Schmidt. It's just listen, if it doesn't sound right, change the mic, change where they're located. If you're recording drums and they're up against the wall, and the drum,
proximity,
the kick is you're hearing splashback from the wall. Well, maybe it's where you're putting the drums.
You move out.
It's like if you're recording an acoustic guitar and it's like all sheetrock around you, and you're wondering why it's all mid-range, it's because the room is not a warm room. It's not accommodating to your instrument. Put some blankets around it, dumb it down a little bit. I mean, so that the walls are not splashing back at you.
And that's what I'm always saying. You don't have to have fancy, materials. If you have some blankets and pillows, hang them on the wall.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No one cares about that.
No.
They just care about what does it sound like.
Yeah.
They're not going to know that you had to hang upside down like a bat while you were recording it, and everybody was bathing you in blankets. No one's going to give a shit about that. People care how it sounds.
You got the tone. Yeah.
And that's what matters. Yeah. And if it's like, man, dude, that guy, no matter what, that guy gets tone. You're one of those 5 guys, dude.
And you are of the same echelon, even more.
I'm just pushing buttons, baby.
No,
I'm just pushing buttons.
Tony Shepperd, I love you, man. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Oh, my pleasure, man. It's all love, dude.
Bro, where can people find you online?
You can find me at themixfactory.com.
Themixfactory.com.
Yeah, and I'm the easiest guy in the world to find. Tony Shepperd, Shepperd.
That's right.
I'm a purd.
There's no A.
There's no A. There's Shepperd.
Yeah.
But just search for that, and you can see me. And there's like a million things. I'm on Groove 3 with my instructional videos, and there's just look. I'm there.
Okay. Love it.
Love you, man.
Love you.